people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. Per Inside the Ring, Gervonta Tank Davis will not be ready to fight anyone until the first quarter of next year, according to a conversation between Al Heyman and Bill Haney. Haney told The Ring's Mike Coppinger. Both the Haneys said they held brief talks with Al Heyman about doing that fight, going back and forth over the offers. Though because this is coming to us from Bill Haney, you do have to sort of take it with a pinch of salt if you don't want to believe it coming from him, because it's not coming from the horse's mouth. The legitimacy of this intel won't be revealed until this calendar year comes and goes. That if the fall and winter months get here and Gervonta Davis does not fight, well, there you have it. Bill was right. He was telling the truth. Though, anecdotally, I don't think a Devin Haney fight was ever going to be Gervonta Davis's next fight, because it's been well over a year since Gervonta Davis last fought. The Lamont Roach fight was all the way back there in March of the previous year. Devin Haney is not a guy you get off the couch to fight without a tune-up. Without a tune-up, Gervonta Davis's whole fucking career is a tune-up. Better still, you don't go into a fight with somebody like Devin Haney off a year layoff, over a year layoff. So, Devin Haney was never going to be next for Gervonta Davis, in spite of all these conversations that are happening in the public eye for a Stevenson fight or a Haney fight. And remember that Gervonta even called out Floyd Mayweather. None of that was ever going to happen this year. Some of it may never happen. All the more reason to look through the smoke and mirrors when it comes to Gervonta Davis if you can connect the dots and read in between the lines, no matter what he's saying via his social media. Whether or not he comes back this year at all will tell the story, because even if you can't fight Devin Haney straight away and you need a tune-up first, so go have it. What's stopping you? We're in July. You can book yourself a tune-up fight with some nobody towards the end of the summer, or the fall, or the winter. There's still plenty of time left. What's stopping you? Well, the ongoing domestic abuse case that has not yet been settled might be what's holding up Gervonta Davis's ring return. They're probably waiting out that situation, seeing it through, as to whether or not Gervonta will be able to continue his career. Might do some time from that. That whole bit about storming into Tootsie's down there in Florida, putting his hands on his ex-girlfriend. Every single element of the ongoing case was subsequently corroborated by the CCTV footage that shows Gervonta Davis storming in there and trying to drag her out into the parking lot, which corroborates her account of events. He still has to deal with that. For so many years now, Gervonta Davis has been able to skirt around his comeuppance, skirt around the law, in effect, amassing a lengthy rap sheet to where it's not quite clear if his celebrity will be enough to avail him this time, because the video evidence is pretty damning. It's what canceled the multi-million-dollar Jake Paul exhibition, and it could be what's holding up Gervonta Davis's ring return. That might be why he's got nothing scheduled for the entirety of this year. And the more distance that he puts between himself and the ring, the more difficult it will become to come back. Because when he comes back, it's not going to be for Devin. It's not going to be for Shakur or any elite level guys. Not that he's got any history of fighting elite level guys, because he don't, much less coming off over a year layoff. It's more like 2 when you think about it. His last fight was in March of the previous year, the first quarter of the previous year, and he's not set to return to action until the first quarter of the next year. So when you put that together, it might be 2 years. Or closer to 2 years. If he comes back in January, February, That's closer to 2 years than just 1. Less than ideal to be fighting somebody like Devin, if he ever does fight Devin, because the other thing is, Devin's all the way up there at welterweight now. Gervonta Davis has been labeled a champion in recess at 135 pounds. He no longer holds the WBA title there. So much time passing from his last fight to his next one, it's conceivable the next time we see him, it might be at 140, somewhere in between 140 and 147. I mean, it would have to be if what he wants to do is fight Devin, because Devin can't make 135 anymore and 140. Forget it. You have to chop off his legs. If you're going to think about a Devin Haney fight in realistic terms, well, it ain't happening in the first quarter of next year. It would have to be for later on, and it still might not happen because of 2 sticking points. The money for the fight, which we've been hearing a lot about, and the weight. Or do you think that Gervonta's going to fight him at a full 147? No, he's going to try to catch weight him, he's going to try to rehydration clause him, and we don't know that the Haneys are going to go for that. We don't know that this fight is going to happen, so there's really nothing to be excited about. In men's heavyweight news, Alexander Usyk is in advanced negotiations for a Wilder farewell fight. Usyk, Ring Magazine heavyweight champion, stunned the boxing world late last month when he announced he would vacate his IBF, WBA, and WBC titles while also confirming he will have just one more fight before retirement. And during Monday's episode of Inside the Ring, Mike Coppinger confirmed the development regarding his final opponent. Usyk had initially hinted he might fight the winner of Daniel Dubois versus Fabio Wardley to become undisputed champion once again, while also welcoming a trilogy fight with Tyson Fury where Usyk is already 2-0. I see no reason to go 3-0, but there were talks. Then there were suggestions that Usyk would face Rico Verhoeven in a rematch due to the controversial nature of his stoppage in Egypt, when referee Mark Lyson called a halt to the fight just 1 second remaining in the 11th round, May 23rd. Now it is clear that none of those fights will be happening, with Usyk instead favoring a showpiece event in America for his final fight. If my recollection serves me, Alexander Usyk has spent the vast majority of his career on the road in different parts of Europe. Latvia, Russia, the UK, Poland. He is a fighter who has never really benefited from having home field advantage, and he's only ever fought in America once, just once, against then unbeaten American Michael Hunter. That is the first and only time I recall Usyk would have boxed in the United States. So now, the 2 names in the frame for his latest event are Wilder and MMA legend Jon Bones Jones. But it is understood the Bronze Bomber is the clear frontrunner. The 2 teams are in advanced negotiations regarding a showdown later this year. Wilder is coming off his scrappy split decision win over Derek Chisora in London April 4th. Which was his first fight since June last year, but the 40-year-old from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, the former WBC heavyweight champion, is still a big enough draw to provide Usyk with the sort of major fight in the US that has so far eluded him throughout his glittering career. Don't be so sure. I mean, Deontay Wilder did box in the United States against Tyrell Herndon in a shoebox somewhere in Wichita, Kansas, and it didn't draw a big crowd. Needless to say that Deontay Wilder's drawing power, it isn't what it used to be. So who distributes this event and who promotes it matters a great deal, because Usyk's not a draw in America, and neither is Wilder, at least not lately. Why do you think he had to travel to the United Kingdom for Derek Chisora? If Wilder were anywhere near the draw that he used to be, Derek would have had to come here. What about this Jon Bones Jones stuff? I thought that UFC fighters don't have the agency to make those decisions on their own. It's my understanding that Jon is still under contract with Dana White and the UFC. He is, but rumor has it that it's gonna be Dana White promoting Usyk's next fight via Zuffa. They're the ones who are gonna be at the helm of the promotion, so presumably Usyk's farewell fight could land on Paramount. Right there, where Dana White does all of his Zuffa boxing and UFC shows. And so you see the framework and how it could be viable for Usyk to fight Jon Bones Jones, though ultimately, I don't think it's going to be Jon that he ends up fighting. I think it's going to be Wilder. And what is Zuffa Boxing's continued effort to carve out a lane for themselves and put on the biggest and best shows possible in the sport of boxing by enlisting the aid of very familiar faces, albeit ones that are on the verge of retirement or coming out of retirement, because Usyk is on his way out, but Vasyl Lomachenko is on his way back.
Is that confirmed?
That Vasyl Lomachenko is going to be boxing for Zuffa moving forward? No, it isn't, but what is confirmed is that he's not coming back with Top Rank. I haven't heard anything about him coming back under Matchroom or PBC or Golden Boy, so you have to assume that if anybody has the capital to bring Loma back to the boxing ring, it's gotta be Zuffa.
If it's not them,
They're said to be the ones doing Alexander Usyk's farewell fight. Now, this is not a substitute for a long-term strategy, enlisting the aid of these familiar faces that were built and promoted by other people. Thus, whatever notoriety they have now,
it's not a byproduct of anything Dana White did.
before he goes patting himself on the back, and you know that he will,
If it turns out to be a successful show, a big event.
Deontay Wilder and Alexander Usyk were already well known to the boxing community at large long before Zuffa Boxing launched. So that if people are paying attention, it's not necessarily because of anything he did, though what he can do is strategically use these familiar names while he builds up his other lesser-known fighters, the unbeaten ones.
Because promoting a fight between Wilder and Usyk is not a long-term strategy. How could it be? They're both in their 40s and on their way out of the sport.
Promoting a fight between them helps to increase Zuffa Boxing's brand power, getting people familiar with the brand, but in the long run, you have to build up your own fighters while you still have time.
Can't all be about old war horses like Alexander Usyk and Deontay Wilder, Vasyl Lomachenko.
It's not a long-term strategy. I half expected Alexander Usyk to cap off his career with a rematch against Rico Verhoeven because I think Rico deserves one. He fought well enough and gave Usyk enough problems that I wouldn't have minded a rematch.
And to my knowledge, he's not attached to any promotions in the sport of boxing, so there wouldn't be anything to stop him from boxing on the Zuffa side of things.
I thought it was going to be Rico that Usyk fights for a second time, but apparently not, so I guess that leaves Rico free to fight somebody else. Coincidentally, Derek Chisora, he was trying to get a rematch with Deontay Wilder. I suppose that if he can't because Wilder's fighting Usyk, him and Rico could fight each other in the UK as part of a Misfit show.
Just a suggestion.
Why is Usyk hell-bent on fighting a past-it Deontay Wilder who clearly isn't what he used to be? It could be because they both came up in the same era. They are from the same cycle of fighters, so Usyk wants to leave the sport knowing that he fought anybody and everybody.
Wilder did claim that Usyk avoided him, yet Usyk is doing everything he can to get him in the ring.
The appeal of the fight, the intrigue, is while Deontay Wilder isn't everything that he used to be to some people, neither is Usyk. Not based on how he just looked with Rico Verhoeven, where before people looked at the fight as a whitewash, now they might think it's more competitive.
So you can sell it.
Just not as a pay-per-view, not in the United States, not to Americans or Brits for that matter, the two big boxing markets. How you distribute this fight matters a great deal. And if it is Zuffa at the helm of the promotion, and they make it available to all existing Paramount subscribers, you probably can draw a lot of eyes to it. But if you make it a pay-per-view,
forget it.
People in America are not trying to pay $75 to see a past-it Deontay Wilder fight a past-it Usyk. The saving grace has got to be that if it's Zuffa at the helm of the promotion and it's going to be distributed on Paramount, hopefully it's not a pay-per-view. Then and only then can you draw a lot of eyes to this, particularly in the United States.
There aren't going to be any alphabet titles on the line as Usyk has vacated all of his, but he is still Ring Magazine and Lineal Champion, so there is that for Deontay Wilder to fight for. In some ways, it would be a way for him to become a two-time heavyweight champion. I don't think he's going to, because I don't think he beats Usyk. I think after the scare with Rico Verhoeven, we're going to see a more serious Usyk the next time we see him.
Preliminary thoughts. I like Usyk to win the fight and win the fight by way of knockout. I think he can wear out and wear down Deontay Wilder by keeping up the pace and keeping the punches coming.
Elsewhere in the heavyweight division, Joe Joyce misses out on world title shot. Despite widespread rumors, Germany's Peter Kadiru has been handed the opportunity to challenge Murat Gassiev for the WBA heavyweight world title this Saturday in Moscow. Reports earlier in the week had linked Joe Joyce with the late notice call-up, but Kadiru has now got the nod. Kadiru is also well known as a longtime sparring partner for Anthony Joshua. It's unknown if Joyce will still fight on the undercard.
Why wouldn't he? His opponent's not the one that dropped out.
Joe's supposed to be fighting some unbeaten Ukrainian on that undercard. It's Murat Gassiev's opponent that dropped out, Tony Yoka, and effectively dodged a bullet in doing so, because I didn't like Tony's chances against Gassiev. And in Russia,
Murat Gassiev, the former unified cruiserweight champion who now stands as a two-weight world champion of sorts, since he's the only WBA heavyweight champion right now. Remember, Usyk vacated his title. That makes Murat Gassiev WBA champion by default, and the only one at the weight, fighting little-known Peter Kadiru, who sports a professional record of 23 wins with 1 loss and no draws, 13 knockouts, having been knocked out once in 24 professional bouts. Way back there in November of 2022 at the hands of little-known Marcos Almada, a gatekeeper with 11 losses going into that fight with Peter. Currently, Peter is riding a 9-fight winning streak. Last in action in May of this year, opposite the ring Sanad Gashi, who he decisioned over 10 rounds.
Most people will not have seen this fighter in action, but there's not that much of a discrepancy in height between Peter and Murat Gassiev.
Which is sort of important for Murat Gassiev, who stands in at about 6'2". In a very general sense, he's not a little guy, but for today's heavyweight division he is. He's on the smaller, much smaller end of the spectrum. Tony Yoka, who Murat Gassiev was about to fight, stands in at about 6'5", 6'6", whereas Peter Kadiru, he's a more modest 6'4", only 2 inches taller than Murat Gassiev. So as stated, there's not going to be a dramatic discrepancy in height and length between the fighters.
It also helps that Peter Kadiru has been knocked out before.
A good little afternoon fight to take in, a fight of some consequence, since there is a WBA title on the line. You could argue that, based on the landscape right now, Murat Gassiev is the most beatable champion of all the current heavyweight champions. He's more beatable than Daniel Dubois, than Agit Kabayel, arguably than Frankie Sanchez.
Arguably.
Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that beating Murat Gassiev is a walk in the park or that it's easy. Just easier than dealing with the other guys, the other champions, because he is noticeably smaller than they are.
And flat-footed. Murat Gassiev does have heavy feet. He doesn't bring to the table the athleticism and mobility, agility of an Alexander Usyk. He's best described as a pocket-sized pressure fighter.
Very dangerous within close quarters if you allow him to get there. Thus, the way to beat him is the way that Anthony Joshua beat Andy Ruiz in the second fight. Staying behind the jab, behind the straight punches, on your toes, circling away from the opponent. Careful to not let him get inside. If you can do that, you can beat Gassiev.
It's very interesting because he would present as the most beatable heavyweight champion in the division today. If one of those Brits want to get their hands on that guy, they might get a title out of it.
That would be their best bet. Britain is where all the money is, in the heavyweight division.
I think a lot of guys are going to be keeping a close eye on this weekend's fight, in spite of it being all the way out there in Russia.
Murat Gassiev moved up to the heavyweight division years ago, and he spent a lot of time here, but he's yet to really make a splash as a heavyweight. Even with this WBA title, he doesn't have a signature fight as a heavyweight. If he can stay champion this weekend, perhaps he can have one later on.
We're going to give Peter Kadiru a closer look later in the week to see what Murat Gassiev is up against, but he does have home field advantage, and he is the more experienced fighter of the two.